All right, let's just jump right in. We're about to dig into an idea that, well, it pretty much flips the script on the entire story we tell ourselves about human progress. It's a really mind-bending look at a lost way of thinking and how its ghost is, believe it or not, still running our world today.
You know the story we all learn, right? Ancient people, they were superstitious, they lived in this world full of gods and monsters because they didn't know any better. And then, slowly but surely, we got smarter. We invented logic, we invented science, and we traded all those silly myths for cold, hard facts. It's a nice, neat story, puts us right at the top of the intellectual food chain. We're the smart ones.
But what if that comfortable story isn't just a little bit wrong, but totally, completely backward? What if those ancient myths weren't just primitive attempts at science? What if they were something else entirely, something way more sophisticated?
Okay, so here's the core idea we're exploring. Think of ancient myths not as failed science, but as an incredibly advanced kind of cognitive technology. Yeah, a kind of psychological software. And the big problem? We've totally lost the user's manual.
And just to be clear, when I say technology, I'm not talking about a spear or a wheel, some external thing. No, this was internal tech. These were incredibly complex models for understanding yourself and society, all packaged up in stories. Why stories? Because they're easy to remember, easy to pass down. It was literally software for the human mind.
So how did this software actually work? Well, it ran on this really cool principle called isomorphism. Fancy word, I know, but all it means is same shape. The ancient way of seeing things was that the big patterns out there in the universe were the exact same patterns you'd find in your society and even inside your own mind. So get this, a story about the gods was at the very same time a story about you.
Okay, let's make this real. Let's take an example pretty much everyone knows, the Odyssey. Remember the part with the lotus eaters? Odysseus's guys eat this fruit, and suddenly they completely forget about going home. They just want to chill forever. And yeah, the surface level reading is pretty simple, right? It's basically a Bronze Age just say no to drugs PSA. But if you look at it with this psychological software lens, it becomes something else entirely. It's not just a fable, it's a protocol. It's mapping out a classic human failure mode, that moment when short-term blissful pleasure threatens to completely derail your long-term purpose, your home. And what's the fix? The protocol says the executive function, that's Odysseus, has to step in and use force to get everyone back on track. It's a user's manual for a specific bug in your own brain.
This ancient software used other tools too, like something called psychological dyads. This is when you have two characters who seem like total opposites, but they're really just two halves of a single psyche. And the oldest, most classic example of this is the Epic of Gilgamesh.
We tend to read this today like an ancient buddy cop story, but in the original framework, not even close. You have Gilgamesh, the king, representing culture, civilization, the intellect. And then you have Enkidu, the wild man, representing nature, instinct, the body. They aren't two different guys. They are one person's inner conflict, blown up into a story. The entire epic is a roadmap for how your thinking self has to grapple with, and eventually befriend, your wild side, to actually become whole.
Okay, so that raises a huge question, right? If this way of thinking, this software, was so powerful, what happened to it? Why don't we read stories this way anymore? Well, that brings us to what's been called the Great System Shift, a massive fundamental change in our collective operating system. And this is a great way to picture it. The old world was like a giant open network. Different systems of meaning or like different languages, all trying to describe the same reality. They were permeable, they could translate between each other. But then we shifted. We moved to a world of fortresses, walled-off, dualistic fortresses where belief systems are mutually exclusive. It's my way or the highway. And truth isn't something you experience anymore. It's something you own.
Now look, this didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn. But it really kicked into high gear in the late Roman Empire. Think about it. If you're trying to run a massive empire, you need everyone on the same page. You need a standardized identity. And that's how you get things like the Council of Nicaea, where they are literally voting on official doctrine. It becomes like law. And suddenly, for the first time in a major way, disagreeing with a certain set of words didn't just mean you had a different opinion. No, it made you a heretic.
The engine driving this whole shift has a name: interpretive contraction. Imagine a story as like this big open field you can explore. Interpretive contraction is when someone comes along, builds a tiny little box in the middle of that field and says, nope, this box is the only meaning, stay inside. A story that was a tool for self-discovery becomes a rule for social control. The goal isn't personal growth anymore, it's about being in charge of the definitions.
And here's where it gets really wild. This whole cognitive shift, it had this massive, unexpected side effect. It actually created the modern idea of belief. You know, that obsessive need we have to be right or wrong about a certain set of ideas. This next idea is probably one of the most challenging in this whole explainer. It's the notion that belief, the very thing many people think of as the core of religion, isn't the foundation at all. It's actually a byproduct, a symptom that the original, deeper technology has broken down.
Think of it this way. You don't say you believe in the sun, right? You just experience it. It's there. Belief is what you're left with when that direct, hands-on experience is gone. It's a bridge you have to build to cross a gap that originally wasn't even there. It's like finding a fossil of what was once a living, breathing insight. And here's a crazy paradox. The invention of writing itself might have actually made this worse. Even Socrates was worried about it. He warned that writing stuff down gives you the illusion of knowing without the actual understanding. The argument is mind-bending. Maybe we started writing everything down, not as a sign of progress, but as a crutch, because we were losing the mental muscle to hold these huge, complex ideas in our shared consciousness. This gives us a whole new way to think about a concept like idolatry. It's not really about golden statues. The real error of idolatry from this point of view is taking something that is alive, dynamic, and infinite and trying to freeze it, trying to trap it in a dead, finite object. And it doesn't matter if that finite object is made of gold or if it's made of words. And boom, there's the modern connection. When you look at it this way, fundamentalism of any kind becomes a form of idolatry. It's the act of saying, I have captured the infinite, living mystery, and it fits perfectly inside this one finite book, these specific words. It's basically making a golden calf out of language. You end up worshiping your own certainty about the thing instead of the mysterious thing itself.
So, okay, ancient history, operating systems, why does any of this matter to you and me right now? Because we are all still running on this faulty, dualistic OS. This ancient bug is still in the code, and our modern digital world, it's put it on steroids. I mean, just look around. Our politics look less like a debate and more like a war between rival churches, don't they? Each with its own sacred texts and lists of heretics. When we argue online, it's not really about the facts anymore. It feels like an attack on our very identity. We're constantly trying to shove this messy, complicated world into tiny, neat, black and white boxes. And of course we're angry all the time. Our software is constantly crashing against the hardware of reality. Which leaves us with a pretty sobering thought. What if our whole marketplace of ideas, this thing we're so proud of, is actually more like a marketplace of idols? What if we're all just standing around, waving these hardened, fossilized shells of old ideas at each other and calling it wisdom? And so that's the final question this all leads to, isn't it? What if the smartest thing we can do right now isn't to build stronger walls around our own little fortress of belief? What if it's not about getting better at winning the argument? What if it's about trying, just trying, to learn how to read the original code again?